Yeah, I'm back. I'm back and we got Dangerous Snow bumping. Are you pumped? Are you ready to go? It is the Monday, December 13th edition of Paleocrat Diaries right here at Reason and Theology. I'm your host, the one and only, your boy, the Kaiser, Jeremiah Bannister. We're gonna rock it out today. And why? Because we do it every day. Because we do it every day, we take a very simple stance. It's super simple. The stance is this. You take a knee for Christ the King, okay? You give him everything you've got. You recognize him as Lord of all things, heaven and earth. And you resolve deep down inside, never give up. Keep on smiling. Memento mori. Why? Because we're gonna die. We shall die one day, and we don't know when. So what do we do in the meantime? We give it everything we've got. We dream the biggest thoughts we can. We strive to love the Lord with all of our heart, to love our neighbors as ourselves. And we're facing a daunting task, aren't we? We're facing a very daunting task because we live in a secular age. Apostasy is all around us. We're in the cesspool of sin and secularism. It's satanic. But there's a way out because we've got a God's eye view. We got a God's eye view, son. And we're rocking this out. We are not afraid. We are standing strong. Glad trads, warriors for the Lord with a smile on our face and joy in our heart. Yeah. Someone said my hair's messed up. In the comments, already causing problems, Jake Fowler. Already causing problems. Ugh. Man, I'm glad to have Dangerous Snow back. That intro, doesn't it pump you up, get you ready for the day? You know, I have haters. I have haters, and they're like, oh, this guy is so radical. This guy's all evangelical and such, caring about loving the Lord and loving his neighbor as himself and having fun. You better believe it. You better believe it. And why? Because it's simple, okay? It's simple because God saved us. Because God saved us. Because God came into this world, he took on flesh, and he's redeeming things. He is drawing all men to himself. And how is he doing it? Through folks like me, through folks like you. And there's way more of you than there are of me. Okay? So we're in this together. We're in this together. We're learning. Okay? We are learning how to make our way, not only to continue to strive, right, and to survive, but ultimately to thrive in the midst of darkness. That's what light does. Light does that. I mean, that's one of the beauties, right, of the last gospel that we have in the traditional Latin Mass. That's where we mostly go. I go to the Divine Liturgy as well over at the Eastern Church. I do that. I don't want to get into too much of all of this, though, because we got a lot to talk about. I have to say, and this might break your heart at least a little eetsy-weetsy bit. Your boy here is going to be taking a break for a minute, and I can only imagine Lofton's like, what? He hasn't talked to me about this. I know, I'm sorry there, bro. I shall, believe me. I'm going to take a break for winter break, so I want to enjoy the break with my kids. We got a lot going on. My sister, we asked for prayer for her. She had to go to the hospital. She had to go in an ambulance, in fact, halfway across the state. She had to go because she has stage 4 cancer, and things were getting really bad, right? The pain in her head, the pain in her neck, it was excruciating. Nothing was helping. And so she needed to get checked out. Fluid on the brain, fluid around the heart. She would need a shunt, right, if she wants to go this route. She has only a few options left. Full radiation to the brain, okay, that's one of those things, okay, and that's an option that she is looking into. She's not sure about it, though, because she's kind of already gone through some of that, and the possibility of cell death, it's an issue. Everybody with cancer, anybody who has kids with cancer, anything like that, I know, we had it with Samantha, is that we had to talk about quality versus quantity of life. My sister's there now. My sister's there, so please pray. Yeah, right there, Venera says, prayer for Phoebe Davis, thank you. You don't even know, that day when I was told, I showed my mom the video, and she goes, wow, that was intense. And I'm like, you called me 20 minutes before the show to tell me, Chris, Phoebe's going in an ambulance across the state because of this. Yes, it was an intense moment, and I needed people to pray. It was urgent. We ain't playing around. We're not playing footsies with this, right? We're letting people know right away, right out of the gate. That's just the way we roll here. It's on like Donkey Kong. So like, we told people that. And I said, the thing is that when the show was over, and I had to control myself, it was hard not to just cry. I didn't even want to do the show that day. I was thinking about not even doing it. And, because I was like, man, how am I going to be able to cope with this? And I thought Crystal, and I say Crystal, I grew up. It's hard for me. I grew up. Her birth name is Crystal. She legally changed her name, okay? And there's reasons behind that. But so if you ever hear me say Crystal, that's just little boy Jeremiah. She only changed it legally this year, so it's a new thing even for us. But she goes by Phoebe. That's her Christian name, and so her confirmation name. And so continue to refer to her as Phoebe, right? Crystal is something that comes out from me sometimes, But I thought about it. I'm like, when the show was over, I just sat there and everything inside of me just wanted to cry. And I get on Telegram and I'm seeing all these people praying. And they've done a novena for her ever since, 9 days. They've been doing a novena for my sister. And it's just so powerful to see because they'll record it. And then they'll share it so that other people can pray along. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, I'll just show you really quickly. We're not going to go through a whole bunch of this stuff. Oh, yeah, there's some notes for today. Look at that. Look at that. Let's go over here. Oh, no, I don't want to see that one. Let's do this one. Okay, I did this morning, by the way. I was way late. I thought that it was starting at 6 o'clock because it's been going back and forth. They're very inconsistent over there, Tim Flanders. Mr. Inconsistent. yeah. But today it started at 6 or 5. I didn't know that, so I roll in at like 5:45 thinking I'm all smooth being early. Oh, no, I'm like mega late. But had a good conversation, right? Tim had to head out around 6 o'clock, but I got to stick around for an extra half an hour talking about Catholic libertarians, stuff like that. But so if you go over here, check this out, right? So this is just the prayer chat. This is the prayer chat. And I want to just show you this real quickly, okay? And you can go, this is a public page, so it's not like I'm showing stuff that's totally private, right? But see how I'm just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling? Starts there, my novel, due at the end of December. I am asking you to pray for me about that, okay? It's actually due at Christmas, and they might be counting the 12 days. We're talking Christmas tide. But no matter what, the whole gang is there putting pressure. It's great. I love it. But if you look, we keep people in prayer. Look at this, 29, all the way up through what? 51 there for Jake. Let's see, 64, Father Roman's wife has breast cancer, okay? Stephen needs some prayer. All these different people, right? People in Austria, different things they're dealing with. Deacon Joe. Venner, oh, look at that. Venner's on there. Yeah, look at that. Happy times. But look, it just keeps going. It just keeps going. And we're gonna actually need to update it because there have been a whole bunch more since then. But my sister's been on there. And so if you go on here, I don't know if it's available. Let's see if it's available on here. Let's see, under voice, is it maybe? No, maybe it would be under, let me try one more thing. Hold on, I'm not going to scramble around all over the place. But I do want to see, it would be under music probably. Look at this. Litany for Holy Souls in Purgatory, okay? You've got Novena for Phoebe. Litany, Immaculate Conception. Novena of Our Lady of Perpetual Help. You can pray along with that, okay? It's in our music folder because it's an MP3. You can download it. You can play it like a Spotify playlist. This one has music mixed in and stuff like that, right? But you've got all different stuff on there, all different prayers. In fact, now that I know it would be under music, let's go back real quick and see if it's under music here. Do we have it? Do we have it? Look at this. You want to do the prayer playlist, the prayer playlist. You go over here. Kyrie, the litany, right? Prayer for Phoebe, novena, first Saturday chaplet, Friday night rosary for the night owls. You got all different stuff in there. Active consecration, right? So you've got all of that. All that's available, and you can do that by going over to Telegram. I would normally put the links in the description. That's one of the things I want to, hopefully will change, is that we'll be able to at least put a couple links in the description. I know I just need to send it over to them. It's not a problem. But if you want to be part of that group, and I hope that you do, because people are praying every single day. And when I went in there after this stuff with my sister, and I'm just devastated. I don't even know what I'm going to do. I'm depressed. I have no control over anything. They're half the state away. What am I going to do? And I go online and people are praying for someone they don't even know. For all intents and purposes, a stranger praying. Tell me that's not powerful. Tell me that's not, that is community building. You're not just calling somebody and saying, hey, pray. You're literally praying with them. You can pop it on in your car. You can listen to it while you work out, whatever you want. You can pray. And if there's nothing else that we do, we talk about apologetics. Today we're going to talk a little bit about politics, stuff like that. So that's all going to happen. You know, and I want to answer some questions. In fact, there was a question somebody asked me. I wish that I had, I got to just look it up. Let me see here. Let me see if I can just get the, I'm going to look it up here. Reason and theology. Let's go. Because somebody posted a question under the last episode, asking me some questions here. We're going to see. Got it muted. Okay, got it muted. Good. All right. Just waiting. Okay, yeah. So somebody asked a question about, they don't want to play footsies thing, but doesn't it cut both ways? I want to answer that. But I don't do a lot of answering stuff, long form and all that in YouTube comment sections because I have a live chat that never stops. I actually have something that's engaging. By the way, Germanicus, he's the one who posted that. Germanicus, if you want to actually talk to me, we could actually talk via phone or video chat, whatever. You can connect with me right there on Telegram, or we can just DM each other, or you can throw it in the chat and see what other members of the Wolfpack, what they've got to say. Okay? Speaking of members of the Wolfpack. Okay? Speaking of members of the Wolfpack. Oh, hold on. No, so sorry. Hold on. We got to get back here. And why do we have to get back here? Because we got to do the music. The transitional tune. The transitional tune that goes from one thing to another, because we got a lot of stuff to do today, and we're going to be moving forward, and then that's going to be the last time. This is going to be the last show until after the new year, okay, the calendar year. Okay, I get flack from the liturgical folks. They're like, we've already passed that. I'm like, are you going to celebrate New Year? Oh, yeah, we got a lot to celebrate. Oh, you know what? Then cut it out. Cut it out, son. What you even doing? What you even playing that for? And so... yeah. So anyway, until when the kids go back to school, then we'll come back and we'll be back on track. And I'm probably going to even add a day. I'm going to talk to Lofton about it and find out what day would work best. That way we can actually get through stuff in a faster amount of time. I did the same thing over at Meaning Catholic. I don't know why I didn't think of that. I'm like, man, I'm doing a series on a book, but I'm only doing it once a week. That book's going to take me a year. And that's a small one. What are we going to do? I said, I need to get through it faster. How do we do that? More episodes. I don't think Lofton's going to be bummed out about it. But he might be. He might be, look, one day a week is overpowering. we can't deal with 2 days a week from you, buddy. Can't deal with 2 days a week. We'll see. So, all right, we got to get in the zone here. Right there, that's the sound. That is the sound. That is the Paleocrat Diary alert system. Anthony, the Grand Canonist, over at the Wolfpack chat, he turns it on, pulls the lever, wham! Veronica, our librarian, over at the book club on Telegram, she's slamming that button, blam, 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 blam! Haley at the prayer room, blam, blam! Deacon over at Spiritual Advice, blam, blam! All of them letting everybody know, because when they do that, the carrier pigeons go. All those carrier pigeons, all to the east, to the west, to the north, and to the south. 4 corners of all the earth, getting the news that, in fact, Paleocrat Diaries is on the air. And that we're going to be confronting a wicked world, trying to figure out, how do we lead people to the Lord? How do we lead them? How do we restore all things in Christ? How do we work along with that great mandate that says, go out in the world, baptize nations, make disciples? How do we do this? Is it a one-size-fits-all? Is it a magic bullet? What is it? And is it good that we read our audience and maybe understand our surroundings? To get a God's eye view, to look down with the eyes, the lens of history, to transcend that, to look down and say, this right here is the layout. This is where the world wants to go. It's been there before, been there, done that. Fails every time. But how do we survive it? How do we thrive? Because you know, and I know, a lot of people are not thriving and they're not surviving. In fact, apostasy, through the roof. Heresy, through the roof. Schism, through the roof. Wickedness, sin, the flesh, through the roof. Wicked bad. And we've got to deal with it. So how? The head and the heart. The head and the heart. We're glad trads here. We've got a living apologetic to believe that we are living epistles, that we ourselves, that we are the best apologetics to the world. That it's not a syllogism. It's not just a syllogism. It's not just what goes into the brain. And it's also, on the flip side, it's not just what's coming out of the heart, the mystic. You have to fuse the two. It's a demanding task. It's daunting. But we have trailblazers. We have footprints in the sand that we can follow. And thank God they're saints. Thank God. Thank God they're saints. Otherwise, you'd be stuck with me. And I'm like, oh, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. So, all right, here we go. Going over to scene number two. Scene number two. And before we even move on with any of that, let me make sure that I've got everything set up. I don't know why my computer, my CPU is just huge right now. I have no idea what's going on with that. What's going on with that? Okay, we're going to scene two. We're going to scene two. All right, let's look at the window capture. Okay, there we go. There we go. Let's see. Let's go over to the window. Oh, look at this. Greetings to all of you. And by the way, if you love the wolf pack, if you're somebody you say, look, and you may not even be on our Telegram, that's okay. You know, you're kind of a weirdo in everything. You're making terrible decisions in life. You need to definitely go over there to be part of that group. I mean, you know, people joke. You know, Tim was like, man, you show up and the wolves start popping up all over. There's these little wolf emojis. And I'm like, I never, you know, arrive alone. There's always a group. And I've compared it before. You got the generals. You got all these hoity-toity folks, right? The real popular pundits. And they're all sitting there, and they've got their uniforms on and everything out on the battlefield. And they're looking at maps and stuff. And they hear this crazy sound all around them. And they look across the battlefield, and there's this forest, a bunch of trees, and the shade beneath the leaves. It's darkened, right? You can't see, but you can hear. There's this kind of crazy sound. There's music, and there's laughter. There's howling. What's this? And out, ta-da! comes the wolf pack, and we're all together, and we're having a blast. And like, well, who's the leader? And they're like, leader? What are you talking about? Yeah, we're all brothers and sisters here. And they're like, but we do have a Kaiser. And they say, well, that sounds like a leader. And they're like, that's that guy. And they don't even realize, man, my own peeps are constantly trolling me. but I never roll in alone. I never roll in alone. So, all right. Good morning to all of you. Good morning, wolves. Good morning, wolves. Yes, definitely. Oh, yeah. Fancy brackets for the third week of Advent. For the wolf there. Joyful brackets. I got weirdos following here. I got weirdos. Oh, yeah, those are admins, too. And contributors, by the way. If you want to see David and Jacob, both of them, they've submitted now 2 different videos that have been broadcast on the Meaning of Catholic edition of Paleocrat Diaries. I just shared their video it would have been Friday. So the Friday edition was their second week of Advent specials. So both of them were half an hour. I let almost the entire show was just giving them the reins and saying, look, you guys made great videos. This is great content. If you'd like to know more about that, you can go check it out. Also, if you go to paleocratdiaries.com, which is also during the interim, during the time off, there's going to be things done to that. It's going to become more active. But it's been really great to have Jake writing over there. And he has a newer piece over there. He has a couple of them so far. Make sure to go and read those over at paleocratdiaries.com. Today is Our Lady of Guadalupe in the TLM. Yes, with a commemoration of St. Lucy. Yes. Thank you, by the way. I need to write this down like on the screen so that it's right in front of my face. You get the music going, you get the camera. Sometimes it's hard. I gotta remind myself even to say what the date is. So I just want to say thank you very much for that. Yes, of course. And the commemoration of St. Lucy, that's my daughter's middle name. Well, a variation of that. Okay, let's see. Anthony says, I got to pump up your channel. Need some more subscribers. Yes, because if we get to 200 over on Telegram, if we do that, and he may have been actually talking about YouTube over there, but over on Telegram, when we get to that number, we're going to have another party. And I think that they're coming up with rules. They even have a bingo game right now on phrases that I commonly say. And if they play bingo and they put stuff on certain phrases, if I say them, I don't know what the phrases are either. So I'm somebody's probably going to win today. I don't know. Let's see. James says, don't you know Catholics are supposed to be angry all the time? You put JQ or JK. Are you sure? Yeah, they're supposed to be angry all the time. They're like, well, when you're baptized, we, put a corn cob, somewhere. It makes you have that face for the rest of your life. You're real mad the whole time. Yeah, they did those exorcism prayers when you were a kid just so that, they could make room for that very angry spirit that you're going to have forever. No, absolutely not. It's like, look, man, we're proud to be glad trads, aren't we? We are proud to be glad trads. Let's see. David says, you know what's making headlines? Pillows made of your corduroy jacket. Why am I reading that out loud? Yo, guys, Wolfgang and Louis, they're supposed to be on that. They're supposed to weed out things that I need to avoid. I needed to avoid that comment. But see, look what happens. Look what they do to me. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing. Yeah, and Anthony forgot about Paleo Bingo. Well, you're going to lose now. You're going to lose. Anybody else who's playing Paleo Bingo and is keeping up with what I'm saying, I've probably said 3 or 4 phrases already. So make sure, find your way into the chat. If you're in the chat right now and you have not liked the video, okay? If you have not liked it, if you have not commented, and I don't mean just this. I mean, I don't know if you can comment during a live show. I don't know. I don't think you can do that. It's a live chat at that point. But either way, comments are very helpful. Okay, comments, shares, likes, and subscribe. Make sure to subscribe. You know how much good content this channel puts out? I'm serious. This channel's constantly cranking out great material. So you don't want to miss any of that. You want to make sure that you're rocking that out all the time. So we're going to go ahead and turn that one off. Let's go ahead and, I was thinking about, let me get rid of this. Let's see if this helps. Okay, Telegram's got to go. So here's the thing, I've talked about apologetics, and I've said some things that were critical, in fact, okay, of popular apologetics as it is understood and practiced right now in the tratosphere and in the Catholic apologetic world and stuff like that. And there are people who go, look, you're coming against kind of a big tradition here. We've been doing this for a long time. Who are you, Buster Brown? And I'm like, well, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. In fact, let me see. My wife bought this book. And maybe this is one of the reasons why more people don't know, okay? Ronald Knox. Now, people know that Ronald Knox wrote a very important textbook on Catholic apologetics in the 20th century, okay? What they may not know is that by the end of his life, he was kind of pulling a Thomas Aquinas and questioning a lot of the things that he talked about. He was questioning the enterprise itself and saying, we are dealing with something different. We're not in the age of reason anymore. We aren't dealing with the same, if I can use this language, social imaginaries. In fact, he used a phrase, world picture. He talked about the need to even focus on maybe specific proofs within the 5. He talked about things that would be contingent. And saying you have to have, for example, the creator-creature distinction, the idea of being and becoming. And to focus on this, and he talks about why. And he talks about how nobody's advancing this. He knew he was dying. If I remember right, he died that same year, if I remember right. He only made it through 3 chapters of that book. He never finished it. Never finished it. And in that book, he talks about not only the criticism that he has of apologetics as it had been, and by the way, as it is right now. It didn't change. So it just kept going. So his criticisms were criticisms of something that would be still applicable now. And he'd say, look, there's something wrong with this. It's insufficient. It's not bad. It's insufficient. You need to know what you're dealing with. But he uses ideas by saying we have to get back to these first things. And he even talks about what we presuppose. He talks about world pictures. Yeah, he talks about world pictures. I just realized I don't even have my pop filter on this thing. I might show a video to explain. Now this is old, okay? This is an old video, 2007. I'm gonna actually have to turn down the intro to it. I just realized that I had put my pop filter. I bought another microphone, and so when I bought this other microphone, I had to put the pop filter on that one. And I just realized it popped into this one, boom, like really loudly. So I gotta put that on. So I'll play this video. But it describes what Knox is talking about. Okay, and I hadn't even read Knox, but these were concerns that I had too. And I felt that so much of the conversation was just being ignored. So much of the conversation, we've allowed the unbelievers, we've allowed them when we engage in debate, we've allowed them to bring to the table a huge number of assumptions. And those assumptions are necessary for them to make sense of even talking and debating with you. They have to assume those things to be true to even get to the place where they're debating with logic or reason or syllogisms, where they're using communication, where they're believing that you're not them and they're not you, that we're not in, you're not just a mirage in their mind kind of thing. We're not in a solipsistic world, not a brain in a vat somewhere, but that I'm a person, you're a person, you have a mind, I have a mind, we're talking to each other. Those are assumptions that worldviews, not just any worldview, can make sense of that. And we know this is true because we know that there are some worldviews that would believe everything is one, man. Everything is like totally one. And you go, well, if that's true, why are you trying to convince me of that? Am I you? Yeah, we're like just all united. And we know that that's folly. We say, look, you can prove that case by going and maybe, swift kicking somebody, in something. and find out just how quickly they realize that you are not them and that they are not you. We are not all together. Or the idea that some ideas of the world, everything is chaotic, everything is so diverse that there's a real difficult thing what holds it together in a way that makes it so that, for example, if I put my hand in a fire in Michigan, I put my hand in there, and I go over to Russia and put my hand in a fire, that it's going to be the same kind of thing. Is it a unique event? Is it a different event? And if not, on what basis, given my beliefs of the world, on what basis can I even assume that that's the case? We've allowed people to get away with that for a long time. And it's garbage. It's garbage. And if we threw them back at that level, and ultimately at the end of the proofs, people do. They throw them back because the idea is, if I convince you, then you enter into the system that is called Catholicism. It's not just one argument here, one argument there. It's a system. It's an ism. So I'm like, why are you hiding the ism? Compare isms. Let's use isms better. But I made this video years ago. And so you got to forgive me for the editing. I trimmed it down and stuff. The delivery, it was different than it is now. I look a little bit different. I look an easy bit different and such. But these were videos I used to make all the time on apologetics, right? You have apologetics with atheism, apologetics with Protestants of various shades. Okay, those were the main two groups that I dealt with. Eventually dealing with sedevacantism, stuff like that. And so this one right here, it's not very long, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play it because it uses some of the phrases that, moving forward, that I'm going to be using when talking. I want to give you an idea for kind of the system that I'm talking about, okay? The ideas and the emphasis, the placement in the stack, that I say, yes, we can use arguments, we can use all those different things, traditional arguments, right? We can use those. But there are first things, and I'm a first things first kind of guy. And so I think that it's good even to talk about what those things are. And if people have disagreements with me, go ahead and send it. Don't send it to Gmail. I'm so sick and tired of that. Stop messaging me on Twitter. Get off there. Go on Telegram for real. And that way you can, if you want, we can set up a time you can actually call me. It's far more efficient. And so make sure to go ahead and do that. We'll play this. I'll put the pop filter back on this mic, and we'll be ready to go. So here we go. This is the 2007 video entitled, Atheist, Tag, You're Out. begin first and foremost here by dealing with what is a presupposition. What's a worldview? A presupposition, okay, insofar as this is concerned in this context, what I mean by that is our most basic and fundamental beliefs. Presuppositions determine what we will accept as evidence, as well as how we will interpret that evidence. Okay, so these are awfully important. It is at this level that we evaluate those arguments that we give one another. These are the most foundational things by which we evaluate evidences, and we evaluate what we see and our ideas about man and all that. A worldview is simply networking those things together into a comprehensive unit. That's all that is. Okay, that's why it's a worldview. It encompasses what you believe about man, what you believe about reality, and it is through this lens that you evaluate everything. That's why it's called presuppositions. Okay, you presuppose these things before you even look at the evidence. Okay, that's how we interpret those things. Two things need to be said. One, we can't just say that it's axiomatic. We can't just say, oh, well, these are our presuppositions, and I just assume them, and I don't have to prove them. That is begging the question. Okay, and this is extraordinarily problematic when the espoused presuppositions that you hold to would make impossible the very things you're trying to do. For example, if your espoused presuppositions can't account for the possibility of evidence or the possibility of knowledge, then for you to want to bring evidence and knowledge to the table is problematic at best. You can't hold presuppositions that militate against the very thing you're using without trying to explain or justify your presuppositions and show how these things are consistent. There are three areas that I want to deal with. One is the one and the many, and this is an issue that not many people are aware of, and especially the importance of it. The other one is the uniformity of nature, and lastly will be inductive reasoning. And all through the history of man, people have tried to figure out how we're able to have generalizations and yet also have particulars. Okay, are we going to, is everything one, or is everything radically different? Are we one united thing, or are we completely diverse? And it's my position that the Christian worldview and it alone can account for this through the concrete universal that we know as the Trinity, or the Ontological Trinity. The Ontological Trinity, what that does is you have the one and the many. You have the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. You have the diversity, and yet they are one God at the exact same time. The three are equally ultimate. Okay, the oneness and the diversity are equally ultimate, and this is key. There are no particulars that aren't related to the universal, and there are no universals that aren't related to the particulars. Now, someone can ask and say, well, okay, we'll grant that you believe in a Trinity, but what does that have to do with the temporal order? Because we have a Creator who's both one and many, at the same time, equally ultimate in both. Okay, and He's created the world in such a fashion, it reflects and exemplifies His nature. If we say that nature will exemplify the metaphysical, we would have no problem with the one and the many here, because we have the concrete universal by which these make sense. This is absolutely central to knowledge, because it's at this level where we are able to generalize and where we are able to look at something as particular. The second piece is induction. Induction, for our sake here, will be the method of generalizing from observed cases to all cases of the same kind. David Hume would have argued that each and every premise, every bit of reasoning about any single event or situation at a particular time in a particular place would need to be individually confirmed empirically. According to Hume, there is no way that that person would be able to go and say, well, okay, I'm going to put my hand in fire here, and then I'm going to go to the future and do the exact same thing over here, and you'd have to individually verify it. Now, he understood that people use induction. His question, what he wanted to know, is what are the foundations of this? He said, yeah, we take this for granted, but he wanted to know on what foundation, on what basis do you do that? And that's been my question all along. Bertrand Russell, he had this to say. He said, all arguments which on the basis of experience argue as to the future or the unexperienced parts of the past or present assume the inductive principle. Hence, we can never use experience to prove the inductive principle without begging the question. Let me repeat that last sentence once again. Hence, we can never use experience to prove the inductive principle without begging the question. Well, why is that? Because when you say, well, because it's been that way in the past, you are presuming the inductive principle when doing that.
Okay? You're presuming it the entire time, which begs the question. So you have to ask yourself, does your worldview account for such a thing? Does it? The question is then, how does the Christian worldview account for inductive reasoning? And it's pretty much the same as the uniformity of nature. So I'm gonna lump these two in together. So I'm dealing here not only with induction, but I'm dealing with the uniformity of nature, because they rely on one another. And it's this, is that we believe not only in a creator God, but this creator God is one of sovereignty, and that he has providence over his created order. He didn't wind us up and let us go. He didn't throw us into a chaotic cosmos. He has placed us in an environment by which we are to live, to move, and to have our being. And he has placed us in an environment that is sustained with the necessary preconditions for life. And one of those necessary preconditions for life, and for the purpose that he's placed us here, is to have the world function in such a way that it is rather predictable. That I know that tomorrow, unless I die, or unless something radical happens, I'm going to wake up. That I know that when I put the keys in the car, that my keys aren't going to turn into a Gila monster. Okay, that if I am driving towards a semi-truck, like I mentioned before, if I'm driving towards a semi-truck, I have a good reason to believe that if I don't move out of the way, I'm going to be roadkill. Okay, so he's placed us in a world where we are able to rely on the basic trustworthiness of what we have around us. And the reason being is because God is a God of providence, he's a God of wisdom and of knowledge, and he's a God of order and design. When push comes to shove, and somebody sits there and they say, well, what is your proof? What is your proof? How do you prove the existence of God? Okay, or how can you prove me wrong? And the answer is really simple. Because the best argument for the existence of God, as I have demonstrated here, and as I've demonstrated in other places, is the impossibility of the contrary. Is that it is absolutely impossible for it to be contrary to the Christian worldview. Every single opposing worldview falls on its own claims.
And that's the point. It falls on its own claims. You know, you have people who say, let me get myself back up here. You have people who talk about this method, and they say, oh, you're saying it's true because it's true. That is nonsense. That's not, in that it's 7 minutes right there, I laid out a whole bunch of explanations as to why other worldviews not only fail, but why our worldview provides necessary preconditions for first things. The very first things that make sense of everything else that you're doing. And I dealt with this before. There was somebody, and by the way, in the comments, somebody, you know, I'm grateful that some folks are letting individuals know, you know, what's this about, kind of thing, you know, because you got people coming in for the first time, and they're like, what is this all about? And by the way, my channel is it's Paleocrat, Paleocrat, just like on the screen here, at Paleocrat on YouTube. That's another thing that's being worked on behind the scenes, so that when we come back after the new year, that we're going to be doing episodes there as well, things throughout the week, little videos that we make, and that's going to become active again. And so, you know, but the thing is this criticism that it's this circular, and you say, well, it always is in one way or another. It depends on if it's vicious or not. And somebody says, well, that's ridiculous. It's linear. And you go, well, the conclusion, let's say somebody starts out with atheistic presuppositions, right? They're starting out with an assumption that miracles don't happen. Or let's say they're a complete naturalist, complete materialist. And let's say that you convince them. Let's say you use your traditional method and you convince them of miracles. Well, guess what? That has now changed their starting point. It's not only changed their starting point henceforth, it's also changed the methodology itself. Because there's a connection between the means and the end. There's a connection between the foundation of that, the first things that affect the means, and the end. There's an interplay between these things. Otherwise, how inconsistent would that be that your conclusion is supernaturalism, and yet you're going to continue presupposing naturalism? That makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. And if anybody ever tries to argue for logic, they're presupposing logic in order to do that. Their first thing is that they're supposing a world where the logic exists, and they're presupposing, in fact, a whole series of things. The very statement, I want to sit down and have an argument with you, presupposes a host of things, right? You're assuming that we can move. You're assuming that it's intentional. You're assuming that there's a continuity in existence, that the world, that it's similar enough to the past that we can use arguments that have been used before and that the conditions to it are otherwise stable, right? There's a predictability to this. We can rely on it. There's a continuity of the person you're talking to. It's not like we're the situation where it's like, well, you know, do you step in the same river twice? That's like asking, are you listening to the same guy 1 nanosecond to the next? That's an old debate on being and becoming. But they're assuming that from the get-go. Does their worldview make sense of that? Does their worldview make sense of meaningful communication? Does their worldview make sense of how meaningful movement can take place? How movement began at all? Does it make sense of that? Does it make sense that we are in a world wherein logic and reason can actually take place? Can it? Because if it can't, then what are we doing? We're hoping that they embrace another ism and then they're going to have to replace the one they had before, but it makes everything convoluted. It's all sort of whack. It's all sort of, you know, totally messed up. It's cuckoo town. By the way, I just really, cuckoo town, what is it? Cuckoo crazy pants. Cuckoo crazy pants nonsense. All right, so if that's on the Paleo Bingo and you're playing that game, you've just got yourself a free one. I guess I just threw that out there. And by the way, Christopher Mount, you see, this is something people say, and let me get back up here. We may even just do this for a while, okay? We may even just do this for a while, because there's some things that just got to be cleared up, right? People say, you don't get this from Catholics, by the way. You usually get classical apologetics and evidentialist apologetics from Catholics. I think this is the first Catholic precept I've seen. When we're talking about, when people are talking about Catholics and presuppositional argumentation, the transcendental argument, right? The impossibility of the contrary, you're using reductio ad absurdum. You're saying, okay, let's suppose your system is true, and if it is true, what are the beliefs about it? Let's see how it plays out. Does it stand or does it fall? We do that every single time we debate with Protestants about sola scriptura. Every single time. We show the impossibility of the contrary when we debate with Eastern Orthodox about ecclesiology and Protestants about ecclesiology and sedevacantists about ecclesiology. We are using the impossibility of the contrary because it's set up in such a way, and here's what we do. We say, well, because we're basing it on authority. We say, okay, you got a problem with your brother, right? There's a doctrinal disagreement with somebody. What do? Well, you bring 2 or 3 witnesses. What next? You bring it up the chain. And eventually, what does our Lord say? Where does he end it? You bring it before the church. And so, you know, of course, Protestants have their explanations for that, devoid of a pope. And you say, okay, so your church says that it's heresy for one person to believe that sanctification is a process. So if you're part of the Church of God, for example, Pentecostal, you're saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost. It's a simultaneous boom thing. It's not gradual. Whereas if you're, let's say, Assemblies of God, it would be. Well, okay, you have a major disagreement. Does it raise to the level of heresy? What about baptism? If you say infant baptism and believer baptism, like R.C. Sproul and John MacArthur, they had a debate over that. Is that worthy? If you believe that infant baptism is not baptism, or if you believe it is the alternative position, where does that rank, by the way? Where does that rank? Is it heresy? Is it part of one faith, one Lord, one baptism? How can you possibly say that? How can you possibly say one baptism? Oh yeah, but we disagree over baptism. And so imagine a group says you can't be part of the group. It used to be that way. They used to kill Anabaptists. They killed them. And so what do? They realize, oh my gosh, we have to be able to resolve this. And the only way we're going to be able to resolve this officially, where it's not just people in 2 towers, right, saying that, well, I'm on my side, you're on yours. The only way, it's got to go back to the rock. That's the argument. Why? Because it's impossible in any other scheme. We're using the impossibility of the contrary. St. Francis de Sales. In fact, I'll go ahead. I'm just going to pull up right now. Oh, no. Why did I shut that off? I guess I shut off. Yeah, let me pull this back up. I'm going to pull this up here. Sorry about that. So I'll put this in here. Okay. I'll just read it. I said I think it's weird because if there's a flow to it, right? And I'm hoping to be able to answer, and I'll keep track of the comments here because this is important. And Christopher is not wrong. There are a lot of people out there who say that they're opposed to this methodology, but they're not seeing how it's actually used by other people, like St. Francis de Sales in Catholic Controversy. When talking with Protestants, they're not seeing how it plays out in Francis Sheed in Theology for Beginners. They don't recognize how it plays out with Ronald Knox in his Lost Works. Maybe it's because it's lost. And they're like, well, you didn't finish it. But he was talking about it. So it's not as if we're alone on this. And every Catholic apologist, to some extent, uses this argument. And they all recognize first things, all of them. And they all would have to admit that they are supposing a great number of things to even advance their classical notions, their classical arguments. They have to. They have to. Someone says, I think, therefore I am. Well, okay. Well, for one, even in philosophy, they've kind of, some folks mock that. But even then, it doesn't answer the question as to there's anything outside your brain. Maybe it's solipsism. Maybe I'm a figment of your imagination. And so the idea, if you're presupposing that there's another person there and that they too are a person and you are a person, then all of a sudden, yeah, okay, we think, therefore we are. And now you're in the world of not just one, but of many. And that's why you have the philosophical problem. Yeah, Little Wayne says, so lost we found it. Yeah, so lost they made a book and included it in the tail end. It's just, yeah, I love, isn't that funny? The Lost Works, that's what they call it. But I said it's a weird game that a lot of these people play. They assume this mythological neutral stance. And they're not even neutral. These people are not neutral at all when they're debating. They have an agenda, right? They want that person to believe what they're saying. To them, they're trying hard to defend the faith, to make an advance, to bring that person to a place where ultimately they will be persuaded of the truth of our claims. So it's even the neutral stance is a joke. As if either the apologist or the opponent is, or even can be, a blank slate. That's more Margaret Mead than St. Paul. It is, and that's bad. That's total nonsense. It's total nonsense, even from a scientific standpoint. It does, or anymore. You can even look at unbelievers and how they've analyzed Mead and views like that, and said, yeah, okay, read Blank Slate by Steven Pinker. So I'm not just coming at this saying, oh, we'll read this Catholic author or that Catholic author. Truth is, both the apologist and the opponent are assuming a wide range of beliefs that are entirely essential, not only to the reasonableness of the ordeal, but also to the possibility of the exercise at all. I said, for example, they quietly maintain assumptions concerning the one and the many, uniformity of nature, reliability of the senses, the law of non-contradiction, the possibility of inductive and deductive reasoning, objective truth, normative ethics, or else why debate, right? The capacity and means of meaningfully and accurately knowing things at all, the ability to convey and communicate them meaningfully to other beings, the fact that there are, in fact, other beings, the continuity of being in a world of becoming, etc., etc., etc. They assume these things to be true. But not every belief system makes that possible. In fact, those belief systems militate against it. That's why I said it falls on its own sword. It's true of everyone in the world. A person might not be philosophically minded, right? They might not be philosophically minded, and say like, look, this is they're the blue collar theology folks, right? Anthony Abate said that recently. He's talking about that. Blue collar theology kind of stuff. The Johnny Q. Sally Sue types. They wake up, they're too busy doing, another day, another dollar, early bird gets the worm life. And Knox talks about them. That's the vast majority of people on the planet. That's the vast majority. But they all have assumptions regarding that. They don't think about them deeply. It's almost intuitive. It's almost like they're creatures created in the image of God and living in a world to live and move and have their being within. And that reflects God. It's almost as if that's true. And these assumptions determine the means and method and aim of the argumentation. What's the difference? non-Catholic worldviews fall on the sword of their own claims. Yeah. So it's kind of weird to wink them away, right? How weird is it then, if we know this, to just allow it to just sit there, silently lurking, but plain as day, entirely unchallenged? Even weirder, most apologists are under this crazy notion that at the end of their supposedly linear argument lie conclusions that, if true, as they believe they are, that it would not consequently become that person's most basic, foundational, and ruling network of assumptions. That's bizarro. That's bizarro world. And I said, look, imagine here, check this out. Check this out. Wow, what am I doing? There we go. So I'm like, okay. So imagine the people that go, no, you don't have to assume any of these things. I said, imagine the alternative to any of those assumptions, right? So I said, these are things that we all assume. And people say, well, I don't assume that. Well, let's imagine the alternative. I don't believe in the one and the many, right? The ness of things. So, for example, I'm sitting in a chair. You can see this chair behind me, right? Some people have really cool computer chairs that have the headrest and everything on it. We call them chairs. I just did just now. You're not confused by that, are you? But they're not the same. Because there's a kind of nest to it. The nest to things. A chair nest. Right? I'm wearing corduroy. But there are other corduroys that people can wear. And you say, well, this is corduroy and that is corduroy, but they're not the same corduroy. This is essential for classification. We wouldn't have libraries. We wouldn't have phone numbers. We wouldn't have any of these things without it. We wouldn't be able to distinguish between you and another person without this. I don't believe in the one and many, but I'm trying to understand how this and that works. I don't believe in the uniformity of nature or the knowability of reality, but I'm analyzing stuff, past and present, so that I can reach various conclusions. I don't believe in the trustworthiness of the senses, but I'm going to use the empirical method. I don't believe in the continuity of being. Hi, I'm a different guy now. Not the same as the one who just wrote that, or the one who just wrote that, or that one, ad infinitum. So the idea that you say, look, if you don't believe in the continuity of being this way, you don't look at that idea that says, I'm the same guy that I have pictures of as a kid and I can show people photo albums as a kid. If I don't believe in that continuity and I don't have a view that can explain that, am I like the river that you can't step in the same river twice? Is that what I am? And if so, are you still watching Paleocrat on Paleocrat Diaries? And if you are, you have some explaining to do. I don't believe in logic and reason. I just want to debate you to find holes in your argument. I don't believe in meaningful communication. Now let's dialogue. I don't believe in the primacy of goodness and truth. I'm just accidentally pursuing and advocating it, not only for me, but for everyone else too. So imagine the cuckoo crazy land that would be if you did not assume those things. It'd be insane. And this is where I say, look, people want an example. They want an example and say, well, who else is doing the kind of thing you're doing when you're talking about apologetics? Right here. This right here is what I do. Consider St. Paul at Mars Hill. I think that's a pretty good example. I think to be able to say, yeah, let's do the Mars Hill thing. Neither the Jews nor the Athenians were portrayed very positively, right? But it makes mention of them, right? It talks about who they are and what they thought about this. About things, that they were superstitious, that they like to talk about new things every day, right? Constantly debating sort of thing. But that makes sense in light of 1 Corinthians 1. Talking about wisdom of the world. Both of them suffered an overemphasis. How did this affect St. Paul's methodology? So St. Paul's dealing with these people. How did it affect his methodology? How did he approach the situation? Did he speak as the same man who wrote Romans 1, saying that people are left without an excuse, that they suppress the truth for a lie, that they erect idols in place of God, worshiping the natural order instead of the Creator? Did he write as that man, or did he suspend those beliefs for some kind of a neutral stance? Did he debate little bit by little bit, one point at a time, starting from some isolated specific to a general worldview? Or did he present a system, a unified worldview, and the very one that he personally believed? So did he suspend it? Did he say, well, for the sake of argument, I'm going to pretend that I don't believe what I believe? And how would that not be as dumb as saying that you're playing yourself in chess? You ever heard that? That's the dumbest line. I love that movie, Searching for Bobby Fischer, but that's the dumbest line in the world. He even played chess against himself. He knows the moves. He knows what he's trying to do. In fact, he knows like 20 moves or more ahead. Or did he present this a system, unified worldview, that he personally believed? Did he pussyfoot around or did he cut to the chase? Did he contend that their system was superstitious, that they were sinners, and that they needed the sacrament of penance? In short, did he sound more like a syllogistic swashbuckler or an evangelist? And why? So here's the layout. He read the audience, right? Talks about the audience. He knew who was there. He called out core problems. Declared that God made the world. Creation, metaphysic is assumed. Doctrine of providence is assumed. Christian ontology and teleology is assumed. Idolatry is called out. Mortality is emphasized. God's judgment is declared. Need for penance is made clear. And faith in resurrection are final words. He wasn't playing. Yeah. And what was the reaction to it? Some people mocked him. You know, that's the question that comes back to Germanicus. Right? He says, what if you're coming in a bit too strong and they get offended and never talk to you again? Then you'd really lost your chance. You talk about standing in front of God trying to explain why you played footsies with the guy. But what about standing in front of God trying to explain how you managed to lose your chance because you were impatient? And you go, I'm following Paul as he follows Christ. And he didn't overemphasize one thing or another. It was a balance. If you go to them and you're just saying you're going to burn in hell and that's all you're doing, that's not what I do. That's not what I propose at all. And he says he thinks that's why people play footsies. I think it's more than that. I think it's more than that. Honestly, I'm just confused at what you're getting at. Found it kind of all over the place. In fairness, I'll take that. I'll take that. It's a 2-hour live show, and I'm a rambling man, so I'm not going to defend myself on that and say, no, it had a perfect flow. No, I grant it. It seems like you felt that apologetics, or at least apologists, are watering down the faith to make it more palatable to unbelievers. Well, if you're proposing a deistic God, in fact, a God that might not even be a person, and you can't make it further and they got to leave. Well, you can say, well, but I know what I was proposing, and go, well, that guy has a sufficient reason to believe in deism. Now, I guess that's better, I guess. I don't know why you're on the roll for that, though. It seems like you felt that apologetics, right, they're watering it down. Though honestly, I don't see it myself. Not that I'm an expert in it, so I really wouldn't know. Or perhaps you felt that apologetics are a waste of time in this day and age. No. And see, this is one of those things. That it's better. He said that maybe it's better to go to the jugular and call out the unbelievers. Going back to what Paul did, right? Going back to that, he did call out core problems, right? Declared God made the world. When you talked about their superstition, that they're worshiping a God that was the unknown God. I'm not gonna talk about the unknown God. I'm gonna say I've got the answer for your unknown God. He declared that God made the world. Creation and metaphysics is assumed. Doctrine of providence was assumed. He makes that explicit. Christian ontology and the aim of man, totally assumed. He calls out their idolatry. But do you see how varied that is? Do you see the narrative that is being presented? Each one of those, if somebody wanted to argue each individual thing, they could. But he's not presenting it that way. He's presenting it as a unified whole because it is. It's an ism. It's a system. People ought to know what they're getting into. And I said, but what happened? Some people mocked him. Some people said they would hear him again. Some people adhered to him. They did believe. Among them also Dionysius, right? And the woman named Damaris, and others with them. But he was debating. More than that, he was debating with people who, quote, employed themselves in nothing else, but either in telling or in hearing some new thing. You know the people, right? How many people like that have you been around? Constantly debating something new. Constantly playing the game. The same kind of people he would describe as seeking wisdom, by the way. But this wisdom differs from the wisdom that begins with the fear of the Lord. You can't say that it's the same thing. Which he says that in 1 Corinthians 1, he refers it to as wisdom of speech, wisdom of the wise, wisdom of the world. In short, no footsies. And I have here, and it's on Telegram. I'll keep it here in case you want to do a screenshot of it. I talk about what are the core problems that he talks about. He even shows how their own poets grant as much. Right there, you're seeing the argument saying, look, you guys know this to be true. Even your own side grants this. Your idolatry is without excuse. Because they're creatures created in the image of God. They're not Margaret Mead's blank slates. He never shied away from the Lord of heaven and earth. It was central. From beginning to end, his apologetic was unapologetically Catholic. Think about that. From beginning, from the very first step, the first sentence, all the way through to the end, unapologetically Catholic. His position wasn't a reasonable option or some kind of a preferred path, but the only system wherein they could make sense of who, what, where, when, why, and how of existence. And he ended by saying, and God indeed winked at the times of ignorance, but now declares to all men that all should everywhere do penance. These guys had never probably heard of Jesus before. He's talking about, some altar over there to an unknown God. For crying out loud. For crying out loud, man. Let me see here. And go back to this chat here. Yeah. Let's see. It says Carl Keating was talking about this on a different show recently when discussing Knox's unfinished book. Jeff, if you've got that link, man, share that with me, brother. Share that with me. Just or somebody screenshot if Anthony in the comments, if he would be able to do that, I'd appreciate it, man. Let's see. Anyone have the Telegram link to this guy? I'm leaving YouTube soon. Yes. It's just t.me/the-Wolfpack chat. That's the big group. That's where everybody's talking. You got to, right away, you got to mute that, brother. You got to mute the channel because there are days where it's like, 800 comments. It's like this live stream here, but it just doesn't stop. But if you're interested in just following me as well, I do some highlights. I'll send stuff over from the prayer chat, from the book club, from the art and poetry page and music page, all that stuff. I'll share over to Paleocrat. So t.me/Paleocrat. Okay? So that'd be what it is. Yeah, some man, I don't understand about that. I don't even know if it'll show up if I do it. Yeah. Yeah, t.me. Oh yeah, okay. No, hold on a second. Let's do this. Watch. People want to know. Let's go back to Telegram. Okay. We're going to go to, let me see. We're going to go to Paleocrat. Right here. Oh, no. Why is it updating? Well, it's not even letting me do that. No. No, what's going on with that? Window Telegram. Oh, no. Yeah, it says it's updating for some reason. I don't understand what's going on. Let me see here if I can just pop it back up. I'll see if I can just delete or not delete, but I'll quit it, and then I'll just pop it back up and see what happens here. Okay? Because if it can, I'll show you both of them real quickly. Okay? No problemo. Well, cancel. Yeah, for some reason, it's not even showing up in this right here. Okay, let's find out. Oh, yeah, okay, there we go. Work. Oh, there we go. It worked fine. All right, there we go. Yeah, it was frozen for some reason. So right here, okay, if you look, right there, share link, right here, boom, okay. So that one there is that. Here's the Wolfpack chat. Let's go up here. Wolfpack chat. And the last one, this is, we've got a whole bunch of them, but I'll share. And of course, Reason and Theology. This is Reason and Theology. So just remember, you can go to this part. Remember the timestamp. You can go here and you'll be able to Reason and Theology chat. So that's over there. That's his. And then you've got the prayer group. Let's find out where's the prayer chain right here. Now this one I have to put on there. Yeah, this one's a little bit harder. I don't know why we haven't figured that out. So you're going to have to just, t.me/join chat. It's a whole bunch of stuff. But that right there, that's how to do that, okay? So I hope to see you there, by the way. And if you get there, click on my profile and talk to me. It's the best way to communicate with us, man. All right. So here's the thing. I said that, if you... I said people say this like it's inevitable. Talking about people doing things and requiring things like logic and reason, or wanting to communicate with another person, or believing that they're not a brain in a vat, or understanding the difference between a chair and a chair, and seeing one color red and another color red, and saying they're red but not being confused and being lost in this this world where everything is like hyper categorized and stuff. Where nothing, if it differentiates at all, that it's just an automatic different category. And that's important for heuristics and stuff, those snap judgments that we make. We wouldn't be able to survive without that. If people are assuming that, but their worldview is militating against it, okay, then we have to ask them how that's even possible. It's like saying that I don't believe in any truth, but I think you're wrong. I don't believe there's any such thing as right or wrong, but I think you're definitely wrong. Like, that's ridiculous. That's totally absurd. And so if their assumption, if their first idea, they say, I'm here to advocate this. This is my position. There's no such thing as truth. Then if they're using truth, we have to be able to point that out, and it's going to affect their ruling assumption. Henceforth. Okay? But I said it's inevitable. Right? Why? Because these people are creatures made in the image of God, living and moving and having their being in a world of the Trinitarian God's design. But the question itself is like asking someone to make an argument in defense of logic, like, let's say, the law of non-contradiction, not realizing, or at least not admitting, that A, the person asking that for that argument is, in fact, assuming it himself. They're presupposing that very law to ask for a good argument. And B, the person offering an argument is presupposing it and expected to use it in making the argument. Both sides are doing this. Again, why? Simple. Imagine not doing it. Again, here we are with the imaginary, right? Insert gobbledygook here. So we have person number one who says, I'm going to just, rat-a-tat-tat it away. And they're speaking in tongues at the other person. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And the person goes, yes, but of course, that makes perfect sense. And I said, well, that would be an absurd situation, wouldn't it? Make an argument for logic. Insert gobbledygook there. Yes, but of course. We would say, well, that's nonsensical. It's a ridiculous scenario. I said, even there, in this ridiculous scenario, the person accepting the reasonability of gobbledygook has to stick with logic. As if somehow even that makes sense. Again, why? Because if they didn't, we'd be left something akin to Wittgenstein's ladder that leads us to this place, right? This isolating and ultimately annihilating space where everything is meaningless and absurd, where thought and communication are impossible, and where reality is itself a mirage. It's worse than brains in a vat. It's hell on earth. And thank God, it's impossible. Thank God, it's insane. Thank God, it's entirely unreasonable. And we do not have to believe in it. And we do not even have to go down that crazy road with somebody who on the one hand says they don't believe there's any such thing as absolute truth, and yet they're demanding arguments that they believe are absolutely true or false. Or there's no such thing as right or wrong, and yet they're wanting to rope us along with this idea that the way that we're behaving or the way that we're living or the way that we believe society ought to function, that is somehow wrong. We can throw them back on the first principles. And if they want to debate, if they still want to debate that particular thing, perfectly fine. But they'll be debating it within the confines of a worldview that can actually account for it. And thank God it's ours. Yeah, and Christopher's right. You kick the ladder down behind you once you get there. You realize that even the ladder itself, logic, reason, the senses, all this stuff, is just nonsense. It's just nonsense. What do you do? And you know what? It's like I've said before. Even Wittgenstein couldn't live according to that conclusion. He just couldn't stop. He had to keep writing. He kept talking. Why? Created in the image of God. Created in the image of God. Living in a world that reflects that Trinitarian God. In an environment that reflects and is made possible by that Trinitarian God. And just like they are, and this is a very scientific phrase, I forget what, it was a scientific journal of some kind said, waker-uppers, that we are inevitable waker-uppers. That's official, guys. That is official. Right? Official, we are the waker-uppers, okay? We are the waker-uppers. Oh yeah, check this out in my daughter's teacup. There we go. Yeah. I'm running low though. I need more, Wolfie. I said we're professional. We are inevitable waker-uppers. That it doesn't matter unless you're in a coma, unless you're paralyzed. So I'm like, well, even if you're paralyzed, you're gonna wake up. If you're in a coma or dead, all right, then it wouldn't count. But if you're somebody who's alive, you will get to that place where you can sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep, and something outside of yourself will compel you. Maybe it's the sun. Maybe it's that internal rhythm, that internal clock within you that you just simply, your body's saying energy. Maybe it's the desire for food. Maybe it's boredom. Maybe it's getting, bed sores. Whatever it is, you will be compelled, in fact, to get up. You will. And you have to actively do something in order to stay like that. It's the same thing with all of this, which is why Paul says in Romans 1 that these people suppress the truth. They push it down. It's an active thing. They suppress the truth in exchange for a lie. Yeah. And so you go, man. And I think the last one. You know what? I was going to talk about secular age today. But I think that this is important. I think it's very important. Let me see here. Let me make sure I'm doing this. Got this up right. And this is the last slide about it. I'll just stick with the comments today. Hope you guys are okay with that. I said this. I said Catholics have always used transcendental argument when conversing with Protestants. So I've already talked about that. Boiling it down to authority. Sola Scriptura, the papacy, right? Church councils, the magisterium. And most of them fall back on it when debating Eastern Orthodoxy or Sedevacantists. But for some reason, they flip a switch when they talk to atheists or various other religions. They only do so by degree, though, because as the end aim conclusion of their argument isn't just that Catholicism makes a little bit of sense, or that it's some sort of a privileged path, but that the church is the pillar and foundation of the truth, that the fullness of the truth resides within her, and that any given system is bound to make a mistake. They are bound to make a mistake insofar as their system, whether as the whole or individually. We see the whole and individually with how the church has treated groups like the Jansenists and the Quietists. Especially the Quietists, it wasn't necessarily a particular claim as much as it was a system. Same thing with Jansenism as a system. Whereas other ones like the Quakers and the Friends and stuff, those groups, it was particulars. You could make particular claims. So you can either deviate on an individual claim, or you can deviate as a system. Insofar as it deviates from those truths, you're making some serious mistakes. Whether it's about metaphysics, whether it's about ontology, how we know what we know, what's the purpose and aim, what's right and wrong. In short, 2 steps. 2 steps. For the sake of argument, grant the worldview of the non-Catholic person. Demonstrate to them by reducing to absurdity how and why their system fails by itself, falling on the sword of its own claims. Number 2, demonstrate by the impossibility of the contrary that the Catholic worldview and it alone can make full sense of these things, be they matters of metaphysics, ontology, teleology, epistemology, morality, etc. Welcome, my friends, to the Transcendental Argument. That's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah. And I said notable people who've used it, right, without a formal structure. And it's one of those things where in this book, right, that I've mentioned, The Lost Work of Knox, he keeps talking about an author. He keeps talking about a day and age where somebody is going to bring this about. He has to believe it. He longs for this. That he says somebody, some author, it's going to be a difficult thing. He's going to have a lot of forces against him. But he's going to have to bring these things together. And he saw the precedent for it already. And I could add to that St. Paul, John of Damascus, Francis de Sales, Francis Sheed, right, to various degrees in various sections. They may even use it, and I don't have any problem with that. Make it a both and. Say, look, you're using and understanding the role of assumptions, but you also have arguments. I don't care, whatever. I'm not going to fight over that. Charles Taylor and Ronald Knox in Proving God. Now, none of these people, in fact, I don't think any of those individuals, and we're just talking just within the Catholic universe, I don't think any of those individuals would say that none of them would say, well, that's my main method of argumentation. But each one of them in their literature, in their writings, employ that methodology, that method of apologetics when dealing with various groups. You can see it on full display. And of course, me. And I put in there, and me, winky face. I wrote a series, in fact, years ago. I wrote a series about the topic in the heyday of Zangus. So this is a while ago. I have it. I have them downstairs. I've read them. I know. I think they're in a binder that's got a lot of my old writings in it. I remember when I was an unbeliever at the tail end before we made our way back to the church, right? We're coming up, by the way. We came back in Christmas Eve of 2017. Okay? So we're coming up now. We're coming up on some, 4 years? Excited about that. Being back in, right? So I finally passed this year, I passed the amount of time in my life that I was a Catholic compared to an unbeliever. I'm very happy about that, okay? But I wrote these articles where I argued that the Transcendental Argument only makes sense within a Catholic church. More than that, all of my old apologetic videos use and prioritize that method. All of them. I've never said, no, not gonna do that, because I believe that it is an apologetic of the living epistle. It's a whole enchilada kind of thing. It says, no, it says, I'm not going to hide this under a bushel. I'm not going to shove hell in your face and be like, you're going to burn in hell, buddy. I don't want to come off like Captain, Chick Track. I don't want to do that. But at the same time, I'm not going to pretend that that individual is not in actually kind of a dangerous position, because that person could die. I mean, look, I know that you can fault on either side, where you say, I came on too strong, and people can, right? And there's a kind of a delicate dance with that. You kind of got to know the person. That's why I like the new evangelization. That's why I like it. To say, look, I'm all about encounter and stuff like that. To say, look, you deal with these people, you get to know who they are and stuff. But when you talk to them, they need to know, even if not by words. It's one of those use words only when necessary kind of things. They know by your life. In fact, most people know what Catholics believe about a host of things. They might be wrong a little bit here, a little bit there. They may not fully understand it. Like they might say, well, you believe the Pope never makes mistakes. Well, obviously that's wrong. But if you say, well, you think we believe that he never sins at all? Most people would say, well, no, just that everything he says is like infallible. And you go, well, okay, they at least are putting a little bit of two and two together. Most of these people know that what they're doing is sin. Most of them know that what they're doing is shameful, especially in a day and age where the sins of the flesh are going crazy. Don't they know that? Do you have to assume that there's something inside of them that does? And that in fact that sometimes they heap things on themselves to lessen the pressure, to distract them from the fact that they are suppressing truth for a lie? They're actively doing that. And self-deception is a crazy drug. It is. And if self-deception does not play in to an apologetic, or an idea of new evangelization, it's insufficient. It's insufficient. But I look at it, I say, people like that, some of them hoped. In fact, I'll give two examples, okay? So one example is St. Francis de Sales, right? He writes Catholic Controversy. In fact, I don't have it right next to me. He wrote Catholic Controversy, right? St. Francis de Sales, Defense of the Faith. He's writing it to the people of Geneva. People of Geneva used to be Catholic, but the Protestant Revolution took place, and next thing you know, a whole bunch of them had become Calvinist. Well, Calvin had lived and Calvin had died. So you have his successor in place. And the great saint, right? St. Francis de Sales said that he had a heart for that place. He had a heart for those people. And he needed to reach out to them, but it was a struggle because, what do you do in a situation where people are slamming the doors on you? What do you do in a situation where people they don't want to hear what you're saying at all? Or they're telling you if you come back, you might be in trouble, you might die, right, kind of thing. He dedicated his mission to love. But that didn't mean that he was the hippie guy. He came in guns akimbo, just blam, 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 just rocking the daylights out of this stuff. He rocked the daylights out of them. And what was it? Over 40,000 people? And just think of the number. I think it's 40,000. Let me see here. I think the number's on the back. It says, by this method. Oh, so he was writing pamphlets, but there's more to it than that. Because he was saying that in these studies that he had an idea that one day that there would be people who would be able to bring these things together in the future to provide a method. Let me find it here. Okay, hold on. Yeah, because he didn't even list them originally. He didn't even list them originally as part of his his collected works for his life. Let me see. Give me a moment. Yeah, because he talks about basically that he hopes that one day that there would be people who would bring this together, and that they would be able to use this in such a way to lead people back to the faith. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. I'm not going to spend forever doing this. Okay. In fact, I'll put I'll take some screenshots of it and I'll put it over at Telegram. Okay, so I'll post it on Paleocrat. I'll also post it, of course, in the channel for patrons. Okay. Oh, right here. It says, it was nevertheless to them, these letters, that he apparently referred when he spoke to an archbishop of certain studies which might yet prove useful as a guide to a, quote, method of converting heretics by holy preaching. And how does he start? How does he start? Presuppositions. That's how he starts. Authority. Right out of the gate, authority. He isn't playing around. In fact, he dedicates, I'm going through the first, 73 pages? And that's where page 74 starts out. You're still talking authority. In his rule of faith. Authority permeates the whole thing. By what authority? By what standard do you make these decisions? But he believed that he hoped that there would come a time where people would be able to see in that something that was useful in providing a method. And I say, yes, altogether, almost 72,000 people converted. I underestimate. I said almost 40,000. 72,000. At the end of 4 years, almost the entire population of 72,000 had returned to the ancient Catholic faith. One of the most remarkable conversion stories in Catholic history. And what did he do? Authority. By what authority? By what standard? And he showed them how their system would lead to complete chaos if it was true. And that the only system that could provide what they were hoping for and longing for and what was necessary for any kind of coherency at all was, in fact, the Catholic faith. Period. The end. Same thing with this. Same thing with Knox. And I'll do an entire episode on this in the future. Because he talks about, these, right here. Let's see. Is this the part that talks about, let's see, the champion, right, talking about a future person who will do this, who is one day to state the case for the Christian religion impressively, has no light task before him. At the very outset, he must accept and justify the dichotomy in Christian thought that says, on the one hand, that most people don't need even big-time arguments. They need practical considerations. They need you to be a living epistle. They need you to not return injury for injury or harsh word for harsh word, to convert by kindness, to be a joyful Christian. We talked about that over at Meaning of Catholic. But on the one hand, we've got that, and on the other hand, we've got arguments as well. And not just ones that we think are decent or make it possible or even probable. But we're the only ones. He must make it clear that the man who claims to reach the knowledge of God by some kind of instinct or intuition is in fact making use of a suppressed inference. On the other side, he must show the philosophical ladder by which we climb to the knowledge of God is mounting, not a set of abstractions, but to a living reality. His must be Jacob's experience. Over this ladder, the Lord himself leaned down. I think you will be well advised to concentrate attention upon only one of the 5 classical proofs, the proof from contingent and necessary being. The most elusive of all, yet the most fundamental. All the others presuppose it. Woo, boy. And to do it in a way, right here, it will be the task of this author to convey all this to his public in terms that are philosophically sound without overtaxing the mental agility of the common reader. That's the apologetics of the Johnny Q and Sally Sue. That's what we talk about, the apologetics of everyday life. There are so many people that they just simply believe in God, that it's something that's as natural to them as anything else. Why? Because they're created in the image of God and they live in a world that he created. It bears the marks of him, both within and without. And it wouldn't make sense without it. They kind of swaddle their own personal lives and their story in such a way. They swaddle it with this supernaturalistic story that makes sense of history, that gives them a place in it. And then they go to work 9 to 5. And they live a normal life. That is the vast majority of people on the planet. So you have to be able to engage with those individuals and realize it's not just about dumping all of the deepest arguments into their head. They need to be taught true, but it's about an emphasis. Regarding the author's argument, he will not, I think, embroil himself with the scientists about what is meant by cause or motion, nor will he insist greatly on the argument from design, from which we infer a supreme but not necessary infinite intelligence. The argument from perfection in the degrees of being will have more attractions for him, though perhaps not in his classical form. Our experience comes to us not in light and shade, but in color, the values of which there is so much talk today. Do they really explain or justify themselves? Is there really any reason why I should keep my word to my own disadvantage, except a belief, whether well or ill-grounded, in a religion? Not only, then, existence itself, but the colors that illuminate it point us to the supernatural. But my author's chief concern will be to make his reader apprehend the notion of a God who is, who alone exists in his own right, the non-ego par excellence. And in doing that, he might find himself wondering whether the divergence of approach indicated above between the professional theologian and the unreflective Christian is as irreconcilable as we thought. That's literally what we've been doing here. We've been doing that. I read this and I was like, you know what? It's one of these things where I can imagine people saying, well, look at me, blah, blah, blah. And I say, no. You take The Wizard of Ads. There's a guy who writes a book, right? It's called The Wizard of Ads. Fantastic book about ads and marketing and stuff like that. And in there he says, if you think you've got an original idea, he has kind of a theory about it. He says, anytime you think you have an original idea, just assume that there were probably 3 people before you who had the same idea. Found one. 2. Look, this stuff here. Real deal. Real deal. Okay. So we'll just do a little bit in this in the live chat and we're done. I'm not even going to play with secular age right now. Not even going to play with it. You know, we were going to talk about the malaise and the cross pressures, right? And this is going to play into what Knox is talking about. In fact, I'll probably do some small videos like I did where I showed you the video that I made in 2007. I'll probably do something like that. And actually, man, did that play the music at the beginning of that? I don't want to get in trouble for that because there's some music in that. I forgot. But anyway, I'll probably make some videos during the 3 weeks that we have off. And when I make those, I'll go ahead and I will incorporate them in future episodes, but we'll continue on with Secular Age, and I'll probably have more than one episode a week, which will allow us to get through the book way faster, double time, right? And so, but the idea being that it makes sense of this. In fact, Knox anticipates it. He said that the age of reason would become the age of will. And that there was this thing, you could sense it's coming, right? That there's a certain era that's fading out where people would no longer prioritize reason, that they would have different motivations for doing what they do, different things that reach a threshold for them, and that we need to understand that. He didn't have a phrase for it. We call it secular age. But he knew it was coming, and he said that it's going to change the world picture. And he keeps using world picture, and he talks about presuppositions over and over. Because he understood that apologetics is not such an easy task. It's not, well, we've got the magic answer. That's just how it is. It's totally true. We're not denying the truth of that. But to say, what's the priority in the stack? When you're reaching out to people, what do you start with? What do you emphasize? It's why I'm going to be starting a series after the break over at Meaning of Catholics. We're done on Wednesday. We're done with our 10-part Lasant series. So we've done a 20-part series on enthusiasm. If you haven't seen that, it's like the crown jewel, right, of my life's work so far. that 20-part series talking about heresy and schism throughout history. It's fun. The stories are wild, sometimes crazy stories. It was a really good time, but he ends in the 19th century, right? And so he's done. And I thought, well, we need to keep it going. But I want to add to that denominations too, so that the Christian, whether a more professional apologist or someone who is the Johnny Q, Sally Sue, but maybe some of their friends at work are a specific denomination, that they'd be able to understand more accurately where they're coming from, and that they could engage with them in a way that, even if you're still basing it off of authority, which you should, even if you're still basing it off the impossibility of the contrary, that you're demonstrating to them that you have taken the time to educate yourself to understand where they're coming from. It's not a cheap trick. You put work in, because you're not dehumanizing that person. That's your friend. You're encountering. That's your classmate, your coworker. You're encountering them. You're in dialogue with them. Let's see. Christopher says, the materialistic, naturalistic worldview does not provide an ontological foundation for logical morality, so they have no ability, assuming their worldview is true. Yeah. To make the arguments prove someone wrong. Yeah, so that's the whole thing. If you're starting out from a position, and your position is that everything is chaos and everything is absurd, and yet you're wanting to convince me of that, and you're using arguments to convince me of that, you're still trying to compel me. And you're doing so in a way that it's not absurd. You're hoping that I would understand it. Your sequence of your string of words put together, I'm able to analyze and not go, oh, what's that? Kind of like, like what would happen if a dog and, an eagle were in front of each other? They might get some sense, because it can't even be absurd with that. In an absurd scenario where a dog is barking, right? And an eagle is sitting there squawking at them, and they're going back and forth. Even the body, the movements of the wings, the face, the sound, right? That shrill sound, or the anger, the flashing of the teeth, those would provide cues. So you can't even get around that. Even in a situation where they don't even speak the same language, you're still stuck with it. Hardly absurd. Let's see here. Yeah, Andrew said, that he's gotten too hot, pushed folks away with the arguments. As of recent, what I know is that we all have to, is that all we have to do is be Catholic. If what we have is true, nothing can stand against us. And what does Father Lasant say about kindness converting people? The joy of the Lord within you. And we sing these things as kids, don't we? Jesus loves me, this I know, right? Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. Don't hide it under a bushel, no. How many songs did we sing as kids that it's almost like we got older and we treated those kind of like we do with like Santa? I would say Easter Bunny, but I've seen a video of the Easter Bunny beating up a guy in a mall. It's from the movie Mallrats, but and I'm not encouraging you to watch that movie. It's it's naughtiness. But the thing is so the Easter Bunny's real. That's definitely real. But people treat it this way. And they say, well, yeah, I know those. That's what we sing to kids. We don't really believe that now that we're older. What, you expect me to believe that? That's like fairy tales. Then what are you doing lying to kids like that about the Lord? Like, what's up with that? I get lying to them about something else, doing little innocent tricks. I get that. But the Lord? But if you live your life, and you live your life in such a way that you are striving to be a saint, you're striving to be consistent, you are going to be light to the world. And that person might come to you and ask you for what's the reason for the hope that you have, especially in a secular age where there's not much hope, is there? If everything is immanent and everything is natural and everything is material and we were accidental and we're just a little blue dot in the middle of nothing going nowhere, if that's the case, man, they're going to ask you, how do you have hope in this? And what's going to be your answer? Are you going to go back to an unmoved mover? Is that what it is? Is that your answer for what's the hope that you have? Give them a reason to hope. We live in a world where there's just none, man. What's the point? You just listen to the music, listen to the words. The only kind of hope that anybody has is that they will live on beyond themselves by downloading their brain into a robot. Think about that. One day, I'm going to download my brain in a robot. And that's going to make me live forever. I might need updates and stuff. That's what people are hoping for. But what happens for the people who die and they never get to put their brain inside the robot? Imagine the despair of the eminent frame. Imagine the despair of the self-contained, the buffered self, the society of a buffered self, the universe of a buffered self that says there's nothing beyond, nothing transcendent. God cannot intrude here. There's nothing beyond what we have here. I opened up my eyes to a place I didn't know, and one day I will close them, and into the ground I shall go. No hope. What is the reason that you have? And isn't that the most important thing right now too? I mean, we're coming up on Christmas. I don't mean to get all, super nostalgic here. But just, I remember when I was an atheist, right? I felt these cross pressures. Right? That's what Taylor, calls them. Where on the one hand, you believe that everything is within an immanent frame. And on the other hand, it feels like there's something missing. And you long for that. And you'll hear people say, well, that's just nostalgia. Who cares? No matter what it is, it's personal. And it's a deeply felt need. And it feels kind of weird to just say, oh, you just got to get over that, man. Don't worry, it'll work its way out like a virus. It's okay. Give it some time. Something wrong about that. People can tell themselves that all day long. And yet when they drive by the Christmas trees and homes and the lights all lit up, there's something about them that longs for that. When they hear Christmas carols, there's something about it that says, man, why do you do that? And they might even say, well, that's crazy. This is just a fake made-up holiday. And yet, they probably still do it. Now, they've commercialized it to death. They've taken the baby in the manger out. But maybe, if you look closely at the ornamentation, maybe, just maybe, there are some ornaments that they've had from when they were kids. And for some reason, they can't let it go. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't stop going to Divine Liturgy or Mass on Christmas Eve, even as an atheist. And all my friends didn't understand why. But there was something inside of me that said, on the one hand, I hated God. I was on radio, AM, FM radio, 5 days a week, 3 hours a day for a long time, just bashing God. But yet there was something that I felt like I was missing, and my kids did too, and we tried to figure it out, and it boiled down to things having to do, and Knox talks about this, things having to do with being born. Reaching an age where you are now a young man or a young woman, that rite of passage. Reaching the age of marriage where you found a mate to be with, a husband and wife, to make children, to pass that on transgenerationally, to continue on with the task at hand, to continue to the covenant, for that to continue in space and time. And death. And death. And that those things, that there's something in all of those. And I remember it was the first, we had a Sunday assembly. That's like a secular, it's a secular alternative to church, right? They get together on Sunday It's bound to fail, even from a group dynamic perspective. Like, just focus on small groups. You don't have to focus on anything, the religion dynamic, nothing. They have no, and I guess you can't. I mean, it would still have a religious dynamic to it, obviously. But the group itself, it doesn't have any core value because there's no authority system. And so there's no maypole or nothing. There's nothing for them to rally around. So the organizer would have to come up with something new every week. And one week they talked about bees, for example. That was a cool thing. Another week they talked about Planned Parenthood. And people were like, I'm waking up on Sunday to go to that. And they sang songs that they just kind of said, well, these are kind of cool songs, a little bit uplifting and such. They were nice people. And every single one of them was caught in the cross pressure. Every one of them. And I was there. In fact, in Grand Rapids, I was in the paper. I was the first person that they asked to speak there. Packed the place out. People were outside. People got turned away. Dozens. Right? It was a fire code they wouldn't be able to have anymore. And we talked about birth, rite of passage, marriage, death. And out of all of that, all of those things are true. But I had nowhere in there about confession. I had nowhere in there. Because there was no place for that. There was no redemption. You're just acting out the natural impulses. You're just doing whatever you are for this crazy world we accidentally found ourselves in, coincidentally. There's no redemption. There's no forgiveness. There's no official universal standard that we can look at and say, can I examine my conscience? Nothing. And so at Christmas, you're in a world where that's true all over the place. That's true for so many people. Anyone, even a lot of otherwise religious people living within a world that's an eminent frame, they're still lost in that cross pressure. There's still something in them that says, man, there's something missing. I lament the loss of this. They know what it is too, at least if they're old enough to have lived before. They know what it is. And, it reminds me, I'll end with this, It reminds me, there was when I first started coming back to the faith, okay? When I first started coming back, I was finding myself not just separating myself from atheist groups and structures and stuff like that, institutions, and atheists in general, but I was in this funky place, like, where do I go? What am I going to do? And I knew I couldn't just go to church because I still had beliefs that were totally at odds with churches. But I wanted what they had. That's why I was interested in Sunday assembly. So I was interested in hosting a group that would meet together and have speakers and stuff on Sunday mornings. I did that sometimes for Center for Inquiry. That's why I was involved even in what would be kind of like a secular evangelization, right? Going on radio and doing secular activism and stuff like that. But when I came back, I was thinking, like, how do I kind of reacclimate myself? And it wasn't even really that thoughtful of a process. Like, I can look in hindsight and say that. But in the moment, it wasn't so much like I was saying, okay, look, I need to get myself put in a position and all that. But it was something deep inside of me. Blame it as nostalgia. Blame it as whatever you want. But I went back and I watched, among other things, like Little House on the Prairie, the Buttercream Gang. If you've not watched the Buttercream Gang, we have to do like a live viewing of it on Telegram or something. We've got to do it, right? It's worth it. It's it's a movie. I'll love it forever. I watched Rigoletto. I was watching stuff like that, But then came McGee and Me. I don't know if you remember that. Focused on the family, right? Had like this little cartoon, this kid. They would draw a cartoon, and the cartoon would come alive, and there would be a story, right? Like the Good Samaritan or something that would be the core of the story that they were talking about. And they had a Christmas special. And in the Christmas special, there's something that happens. And I won't say what it is because I genuinely hope that you watch it. And I actually hope that you watch some of the shows before that make sense of the characters as they developed to reach that place on Christmas. But it was the main character's life. Decisions that they made when no one was looking. It wasn't decisions on some chat. There wasn't even the internet yet. It was going to somebody's home, knocking on a door, and even seeing something that the person on the inside wished they never saw. I think it's analogous. It's its own little parable in a way. That we can say, when we're encountering unbelievers, we're knocking on those doors. We're there with gifts, but we're bearing something, even if that gift is nothing more than our kindness and our love. And our ability to say, you know what, I have a reason for the hope that I have. I have a reason why I'm smiling. I have a reason why I'm not giving up. I have a reason for believing that there's something bigger than myself, and that the life that we live here is not some accident going nowhere. But when we do that, we have to be willing to see and to recognize that there's going to be shame if we see the sin on the other side of the door. Sometimes not the stuff they're doing, sometimes stuff that's just, the interplay of nature and nurture. But that we see into that person a little bit. And that we're gentle with the idea, that we're not judgmental about it, but that we don't wink at it. The time of the winking is gone. But that we're gentle about it. That we're caring and that we understand that God did that for us. We didn't deserve it, right? I definitely didn't deserve it. Can any of you say you did? But God was gracious. And we should be too. And so I just really hope that this year, right? I just hope that this Christmas, that when you're thinking about, because I know I am for myself, right? So I'm saying I'm doing this for myself. I'm not just telling you, go do this, go do that. I'm saying I'm looking at myself and saying, what am I doing? How am I presenting God to the world? How am I living it in my heart when no one else is around? What do I do in the privacy of my home when no eyes are on me, when the camera's off? What do I do when I'm talking and I'm not typing for it to go onto a page? Or what am I doing when I'm on a live chat? Or what am I posting about? What am I putting before my eyes that only I would know? Right? What am I doing? And what am I doing with other people when I bring that person who I happen to be, that person in that private place, that person when the doors are shut and nobody else knows, that person, that place of integrity that really defines who you are, that person, when that person goes out into the world, who am I to them? Do I overemphasize one way or another? Do I have a false zeal, a false sense of prudence? Am I falling on either, am I hitting either one of those rocks of shipwreck? Or am I somebody trying to be balanced to say, look, I want to be all things to all people. I want to reach out to the person who's struggling or the person who's being arrogant and gently but warn them and say, look, you're out there doing this. Call it out. But at the same time, don't just call it out as some drive-by. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, I got that person. Reach your hand on and help them up. In some ways, you almost got to hope that you hurt them a little, but that it's redemptive. Especially now. And especially you. Especially me. Right? Especially us. And of course, Andrew Stahl, of course you have buttercream, gang. Oh, man. Oh, buddy, of course you do, dude. Bro, you're awesome, man. I'm grateful for all of you. And no, I caught what people, David, you said, oh, your crown jewel, you're saying you peaked? Not even close, son. It's going up and up and up. It's going up and up. But look, and we're going to keep on moving with that. The Enthusiasm series. If you have not seen that, and you are interested in what we do and talking, you've heard people talk about enthusiasm, you've seen little stickers or whatever, that if you want to know more about that, you can either go to YouTube, go to Meaning of Catholic. I've got a folder there with my name on it. It's a playlist. But you got to start at the beginning of it. It's actually, I work backward, right? So I work from the most modern times, and I work my way all the way back. So I start with the revivalists, and I move my all the way back to the beginning at the letter to the Corinthians, St. Paul at Corinth. But you have to start with the video entitled, what is it? Know thy enemy. And in parentheses, it says within and without. So know thy enemy within and without on the nature and philosophy of enthusiasm. That's part 1. And from that point, we can go that way. Or if you go over to Telegram, t.me/the Wolfpack Chat, or Paleocrat, t.me/Paleocrat. If you do that, you'll be able to just ask for it. We've got it listed so that you can it's got it timestamped and everything, a table of contents, each link, each one of those chapters and videos are set up. So you click on it and it takes you right to the beginning, because the first 45 minutes or so was, different things, engaging with audiences and stuff like that. So, but the actual presentation normally was about an hour and 15 minutes or so. So it just takes you right to the beginning of that. And I'll be setting up over the Christmas break, I'll be setting up a playlist over at meaningofcatholic.com. And so I think it's themeaningofcatholic.com. I think. So I'm not entirely sure. I haven't had it up on the screen in a minute. And so but they're gonna share it over at that.com. Of course, I will also share that at paleocratdiaries.com. Same thing with the series on fatherless aunts, right? On the guides for young men and young women that we've applied across the board, as well, of course, as the series we're doing right now on how not to be secular. We'll put those together as well. And that way it's always in a nice format, and you can just skip right to that part. And eventually I'd like to make it so it could even be on DVD with pictures of the people we're talking about, maps and timelines and stuff like that. So we'll see. So, all right. Very grateful. And yes, last thing. Christopher said, Greg Bonson said in a debate once, in coming to the debate, you lost the debate. Yes. And it wasn't just you lost because you're here, right? He's like, we're going to unpack this. There's some unpacking to do, but I'm going to demonstrate to you. He did that all the time. Powerful, powerful, powerful stuff. And speaking of 80s movies, Jeremiah kind of sounds like you could narrate my life in a movie. If you ever make a movie about it, I'd be willing to do that, buddy. I would be willing to do that. All right. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for all of you. I'm grateful for the show. 2021 was an amazing year. It was by far the most productive year of my entire career. The people I connected with, the channels that I air on now, I got to give a huge thanks. It's life-changing when people like Michael Lofton or Timothy Flanders, when they provide a space for you to do what you do, that they believe in you. And they say, in spite of any disagreements we may have, I love what you're doing. Your heart, your energy, right? Your craziness, maybe. Maybe you're a little bit off your rocker, but I love you, bro. And I want to see how you can help all of this stuff grow. I'm grateful for that. But most of all, I'm grateful for all of you. Those people who hop in that Wolfpack chat, right? Those people who hop in the live chat and they're throwing up those wolves. Those people that have sent shirts. In fact, I got this. My buddy Phil, check this out real quick. Merry Christmas to us. Sent that, just saw it and thought of us. The people who go out and they share it, all the admins we've got. Anthony, right? He's my right-hand man. The prayer chat, all the people who've prayed. All of it. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be doing this at all. We wouldn't be making the strides that we are. I've beat my head against a wall for a long time, speaking into microphones like somebody screams into a pillow. But then came you. That was the greatest Christmas gift as an adult that I'd ever received. I'm really grateful for all of you. You've helped make me the best person I can be, and I hope that I'm doing the same for you. Until next time, never give up, keep on smiling, and memento mori.
I wanted to make people dream bigger thoughts.